Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and this is how to make a driving and racing game in Unity 5. Welcome to episode 6. So this episode we are going to do a couple of things. We're looking at starting a countdown timer, so we'll be using some UI. We'll add in some sound effects to make kind of like a beep for these countdowns, and we'll also do some animation as well. So firstly, before we do anything, let's check that we have the animation tab just here. If you don't have this animation tab, just click on this little menu at the side, click Add Tab, and then click Animation, and it'll appear like this. We'll be using this in just a minute. So let's set up some UI to say 3, 2, 1, and then we can race. So I'm going to do it via a text box for now. You can use an image if you want to. The same principle will sort of apply when we do the scripting at least. So game object, UI, text, and let's enlarge the box itself to about there maybe, and let's get it center, and then I'm going to pull it up just a little to about there. Let's put the number 3 in the box and let's put it in center. I think I'll have the text as white so we can actually see it, and let's have this quite large. Let's try 150, and let's bold it as well. And let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks fine. So next what we need to do is let's play with some animation. So let's create a folder specifically for containing our animations. So down here in our asset folder, right click, create folder, and animations. When you're in this folder, make sure you have this object selected. I'm going to right click, rename, and call it Countdown UI. And what I'm going to do now is on our animation tab, we need to click on create, and let's call this Countdown Anim. Okay, so when you've created it, you should see all these lines here. This is like a time frame. Hopefully, and I do say hopefully, over here you'll have samples as 60, and just above it you'll have 0. So the samples represents the frames per second. So in this case we're going at 60 frames a second for this animation, which is fine. The record button should hopefully be, or at least look like it's pressed down. So if it's a lighter grey than all the others, then you're fine. If not, click on that record button now. If you're using, I think, Unity 5.6, you may need to press that record button. So what we're going to do is we want this 3 to be as it is on the very first frame. So we're going to use 0 as the first frame. And what we're going to do is kind of have it kind of rotate away from the screen to count down. So the first frame rotation we want to be set as 0, but to get that rotation set correctly, it needs to be highlighted red to say there is a change. Best way to do this, if we rotate just on the X and change that rotation to 1 and then back to 0, and hit enter, you should be able to see 2 little dots appear just here. They represent something that's occurring on that specific frame. If you click on the little kind of diamond next to where it should say rotation, go on in here and we'll need, yes, if it's not ticked as quaternion, you may need to tick this option here. Sometimes rotation can go a little bit funny when it comes to animation. So it's always best to select the quaternion as an option. So this entire animation is going to last a second. And what I want to happen is from frame 0 to frame 40, I want it to kind of rotate very slightly. And then between frames 40 and 60, let's rotate it completely off. So let's select our frame here and go to frame 40. And in frame 40, you'll see it set as 1, but let's set it to 0 and then reset it as 1 and hit enter. And then click on these 2 dots here that begin the frame and then change the frame number to 0, and you may need to change this rotation back to 0 on that frame. So hopefully if we go to frame 40, it should say 1. And if we go to frame 60, we just need to change that rotation number to 90. And then click on the record button to end our animation. So this is our entire animation sequence now. It may not look too well, it's not a lot really, is it? It's just a couple of frames that we've altered, but the animation is kind of automatic between each section that we have changed. So if we go back to project and then click on this countdown anim with the little play button, and over here in the inspector panel, just tick loop time off, so it only plays once. So if we press play now, you can see that that 3 then kind of animates off screen. What I'm going to do, I'm actually going to turn my volume down, as it does appear a little bit loud. So next thing, let's import some audio so we can have as that 3 counting down. So in our assets folder, right click, create folder, call it audio. And within this audio folder, I'm going to create another one and call it FX. I'm just using the letters FX for short. I'm going to drag and drop these 2 audio files into Unity, and you can get them on the website for free. Head over there, head to downloads and assets section onto the driving and racing tutorial, and download them there under episode 6. Let's add these to our scene now, so we actually have some sound on our camera. So in the car, click the arrow and down to cube, and on main camera, right click, create empty, right click, rename, and let's call it the same as the audio files themselves. So get ready, and let's drag and drop that get ready onto there. And over here on the inspector panel, all we need to do at this point is make sure we untick play on awake. All play on awake does is as soon as this object becomes active, for example, when we press play on the scene, it means that the audio will play, but we don't want that. We want to play it via scripting. So on the get ready, hold control, press D, then press F2, and let's just change this one to go audio. And just drag and drop the other audio over here in audio clip. So that's our 2 audio clips ready to roll in our script. So let's create that script, shall we? In the scripts folder, let's right click, create C#, and let's call it countdown. Open it up in MonoDevelop or Visual Studio, whichever one you have, and we'll be creating 5 variables, I think. Have I counted that right? Yes, 5. So let's get rid of the note at the top. We don't need that. And let's also get rid of update. We don't need update, do we? We'll be using start. So if we recall, in the last tutorial, we had using Unity engine.ui. So we're going to need that again in our countdown script. So using Unity engine.ui, semicolon. So the first variable is going to be the text box that we created. So public game object, and I'm going to call it countdown, semicolon. Next 2 variables are going to be the 2 audio sources we've just brought in. So public audio source, and I'm going to call it get ready. Same again, public audio source and go audio, semicolon. Next 2, we're going to have the lap timer, because we want that to go at the same time as we're actually driving the car, and we're also going to have the car controls become active at that exact same second. So public game object lap timer, semicolon, and finally public game object and car controls. Now the way I'm going to do the car controls is going to be a little bit of fun, because I'm sure some of you guys know, if you've seen any of my previous tutorials, I like to mix things up. I like to do things a little bit differently, sometimes a little bit of fun. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to do a quick JavaScript just to show you how C# and JavaScript can sort of work together in a very roundabout way to get things accomplished. We're not going to be doing too much JavaScript in this series. In fact, I'll be quite surprised if we do JavaScript again in the next 6-7 tutorials. But I'll explain that as we get further along anyway. So the first thing we're going to want to do is ignore the void start, and we need to do something called Ienumerator. And I think we've done that at some point, haven't we? I'm not sure if we have actually. Did we do it in lap time management? Do you know, I can't actually remember. Okay, so the way Ienumerator works is because we're going to be using something called yield return new wait for seconds as a line that we're going to use. You can't use that in a void because it doesn't like it really. That's the best way of explaining it. So rather than use the word void, we use the word Ienumerator. So Ienumerator, and I'm going to call it count start. Open close bracket, open curly bracket. And I'm going to go down a few lines and then close curly bracket just so as it kind of closes that function for us so we can go back to void start and do what we need to do here before we go any further. So void start is going to start this coroutine of count start. So we need to do start coroutine and in brackets count start open close bracket, semicolon, and I'll save that script there just to check we're all okay. Excuse me. So first things first, in our count start section, I'm going to wait for half a second. So yield return new wait for seconds, and in brackets 0.5 f. Close bracket, semicolon. So the f is because it's a float. It's not a whole number. I may have explained it before, but whenever we use a decimal, we always have to put f after when we're using C#. So first thing we're going to do is, if this particular UI that we have here doesn't say 3, you may leave it blank if you want to. We're going to set this component, the text, to say 3 just in case. So count down dot get component open spiky bracket and then text with a capital T, close spiky bracket, then open close bracket dot text equals, and in quotes 3 semicolon. Then at this point, let's play our first get ready noise. We want it to go beep. So get ready dot play open close bracket semicolon. And then let's set this game object as active. So count down dot set active in brackets true. And while we're at it, let's actually set it as inactive in the main scene before we go any further. So disappears from the screen. So now we've got that set as active and it's playing its animation. We need to wait for 1 whole second because that's what we've set the animation length for. So yield return new wait for seconds and in brackets 1. Remember, we don't need that f because it is a whole number in this case. After a second, we're going to take this line of code, countdown.setActive in brackets true, and we're going to change it to false. And in that, we're going to take this get component text, place it below, and we're going to change it to 2. So now the game object has disappeared. We can set it as 2, and then we can play our get ready again, which is what we want. And then we set the actual box back on screen. So you can see what we're doing here is we're creating a little sequence for ourselves. So you can guess what's going to happen next. We take the wait for seconds, we wait for a second, and then we set it active false again. And then we take the countdown again, the box, change it to the number 1. And I am hoping you guys are ahead of me now and you've got to the end of this section. So we play and then we set it as true. And then after we set it for true, we wait for that final second, which is there. Then after this, we take this line of code, countdown.setActive false. So we set it false once again. And after this, we have the go audio play. So go audio dot play, open close bracket, semicolon. And the final things to do on that exact same frame is to set our lap timer running and set our car controls as active. So lap timer dot set active true, and then finally car controls dot set active also true, semicolon, and save. So that's all we really need to do in this script. So it's just a case of creating this sequence of events that counts down for us, and once it gets to the end it plays the different sound and then allows us to start driving our car and counting down our time. So hopefully we've got no errors there. Console is empty. That's what I like to see after doing a script. So as I say, you guys know I like to mix things up a bit. So I'm going to get the car moving with some JavaScript as a quick little example of showing how both scripts can be integrated into a single game. Not specifically talk to each other, but they can be used within game objects. So to do this, what I'm going to do is on the car itself, I am going to go to car controller script and I'm going to disable. Now what this will mean is that if we press play now, we could not control that car because this particular script in the inspector panel has been disabled. So right click, create, and make sure you click JavaScript at this point. And what we're going to call this is just car control active. So I'm not going to go into specifics about how JavaScript works, how it doesn't work, but the basics of it are roughly the same as C#. The commands are almost the same. So instead of, for example, void, it just says function. So in this case, rather than function start, let's get rid of update and the pragma, we don't need that. So in function start, what we need to do is specify the car control, the car itself, I should say. So let's declare that as a quick variable. So to do that in JavaScript, we need to do var car control colon, and that's going to be of type game object. If you'd like to learn more about JavaScript and how it works, you can check out a couple of other tutorials that I have on there. The beginners one does have some JavaScript in it as well. A couple of others do, but some of the later ones are just specifically C#. So the way this is going to work is car control dot get component, and in brackets and quotes we need to put the name of that script we've just disabled. In this case it was car controller, quote, close bracket, dot enabled equals true, semicolon, and then save that script. So then what we need to do is create a couple of game objects. So game object, create empty, and let's put on the countdown object first. And we just need to set our variables right here. So the get ready audio goes on there, go audio on there, the countdown UI goes on the first one, and lap timer is going to be a lap time manager, I think. That is the one, isn't it? So lap time manager goes on there. And then finally we need to sort out our car controls. So game object, create empty. In fact, let's rename that first game object as countdown manager, and let's rename the second one as car control manager. And then we just need to put that JavaScript that we wrote onto there. And then where you got car control, just add the car to there, and then back to the countdown manager and just add that car control manager to the car controls. So the way this is actually going to work, if you can't quite figure out what's going on, as I say, I like doing things fun. So when we get to the end of the script of the countdown, it's setting car controls as active. So this object, which is car control manager. So it's setting this object as active. So we need to set it as inactive for now. So when it does become active, this object, it means that it's setting this object car, and it is making car controller script active. So hopefully I'm going to save my project there. What's going to happen now when we press play is it will beep and count down 3, 2, 1, and then we'll be able to race. Time will start counting, and car control script will become active. So let's check that out. Perfect. So that is how we do it. And just to check things work fine, let's press play again. And I am trying to drive the car and it's not working until we get to that point. So we've got things really going on nicely now. As I say, there are a few different ways that you could probably set the car controls working and not working. But I love mixing things up. I like to be creative. And as I say, it's also a great example of how JavaScript and C# can work together to achieve something. So next episode, we're going to start looking at saving our lap time, and we're going to start dealing with some AI. The AI is a lot of fun, I got to say. I love sorting the AI out with cars, because all sorts of things can happen, and tweaking things it takes time, but it really is it gives you a good sense of satisfaction when you've got something working brilliantly when it comes to AI cars. So until that next episode, guys, thank you very much for watching.